couple of I think, good resources. I mean, not every therapist is going to be listed on psychologytoday.com, but it's a good place to start because you can go online and type in whatever area you're living in. So in this case, you can type in Tucson, Arizona. It will bring up a list of therapists. There should be other things that you can click on the website to sort of narrow down the options. Mm-hmm. So you could even click on, I'm looking for a therapist who speaks to grief. And then you can go and look at their bios and read a little bit about them and get a sense. Because a lot of times they'll put in, I work with grief, but when you go to their bio, they really don't speak much to it. So it can start to give you some ideas. And they often have websites that they can, put on the psychologytoday.com page so that you can click on their website, go check them out further. That's one place to do it. Another, I really think just checking in with your family, friends, who's used a therapist, who do they recommend, why do they recommend them, anybody you know that you feel comfortable asking that question of, I think is a great space to go. Also, I am actually on a therapist listserv in Tucson, so there's well over 1,000 therapists on that listserv, and if people write me and say, oh, I need somebody who needs this, that, or the other, I can plug it in and say who's doing that, what insurance might be important, if they need to use insurance, that kind of thing. So that's another way. So there's a couple different ways.
Yeah, I remember it feeling really overwhelming. I come from a family that does not do therapy. Therapy is not even a word like in our vocabulary. So I didn't know anybody who'd ever done it before. I had no reference point. And I don't even know how I knew so strongly that I needed therapy. I think I just looked around and felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to. And I needed somebody to talk to. And somebody I was hoping who could, I think, even maybe help explain to me a little bit about, like, what was going on, or validating, like, it's okay, that's normal, or I don't know. I just was so bewildered and lost, I think, in the whole experience. So it was overwhelming to look around at lists. I went first through my insurance, and then of course they provide this whole list and of, I don't know, like 18 or 20 local therapists, but then it turns out there's only 2 or 3 actually accepting patients. And it was exhausting to repeatedly tell my story to strangers when I was at this point where everything was so raw. I mean, it was just hard to say out loud that my son had died, and that was why I needed help. And I'm glad that I persevered, but I can see how that could be a stumbling block for a lot of people to begin with, that they just
for sure
can't do it.
And let me just say, the thing with the insurance lists, so they're only going to list people who have contracted with them to provide services, and often they don't keep them updated. So you could call the therapist and say, oh, I saw you were on my Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance list, and they're like, oh no, I'm not taking that anymore, but they haven't been removed from the list. And you're right, I think this is a really hard time, especially now, to find a therapist that is taking clients. Often they are overwhelmed themselves with the sheer number of people. So perseverance. Yeah.
And it feels like, which I don't have any personal experience in, so I can't really speak to, but just it feels like there's cropping up more and more of these apps, and this concept of like, oh, you just can text your therapist whenever, or I don't even understand it all. I look at it and think like that's for me personally, I need to like at least see over Zoom or feel this connection. I couldn't do something that was that I don't know, removed, I guess, from me.
Yeah.
But what are your like thoughts on those services?
I don't know that I can speak to that. I am concerned with that, sort of along the same lines that you're talking about. My question is like, is it really the therapist on the other end of that text? A qualified person. How do I know that if the person is appropriately licensed and, you know, located in my state where I am also sitting? And it's the middle of the night. Why are they answering that text? You know, it is concerning.
Yeah.
And typically, what I do hear from the ranks of therapists about these services is that often the people who sign up with those organizations are not paid well and are not really given sufficient or good enough time to work with people. So they're really more of a business organization than a mental health organization, is sort of what I'm hearing in the, you know, scuttlebutt about
Yeah.
these kinds of services. So you have to be pretty leery or at least curious about it.